All right. As promised, today being Tuesday, don't forget Twitch tonight. I hope. Depends on what happens with my cat. I should be okay for Twitch tonight. Should be okay. But Twitch tonight, we're going to continue with the darkness. And this is the darkness is part of what got me thinking about this because of a major plot twist in the game that you don't see very often. A male main character, tough guy, mobster main character, self-harms in a moment of despair. And I realized replaying the game's from 2007, like, wow, that would be a big deal. That would be shocking even today. And that's part of what got me thinking about this topic and part of what got me thinking about this whole situation. But I want to read a series of tweets I did over the weekend, that Saturday, that sort of set up where I'm coming from here and why I think that maybe it's time to move from strictly focusing on women's stuff to focusing sometimes on other sides of the equation. And for those trans and non-binary people out there, I am not, I am speaking about the performative binary. I am not saying that gender is just, I am on the record frequently that I believe in, sort of the indigenous led up here in Canada, 5 gender theory. That works for me. So I don't believe there are only 2 genders. Or even only 2 sexes. I do believe that, your brain and your body can not align, and just because it's a minority of people doesn't mean it exists. It doesn't exist. So here we go. This is what I said. It's documented that men and women both struggle with expressing authentic emotions. The specifics may differ between individuals, but it's a universal problem. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense to deal with that instead of gendering the issue. This is obviously coming out of the discussion we had about toxic masculinity last week. It's also important to factor in how much, say, women are involved in enforcing male avoidance of expression of emotions other than anger. Similarly, men do contribute to women swallowing legitimate anger because it's not well received, and trans non-binary get caught in the divide. One of the things I think that gaming did for me was preserve my emotional authenticity throughout my teens. But I'm really sick of being told I'm too loud, aggressive, bossy by men who can't be anything but angry. I'm looking at you, TYT, progressive, you are not. This cycle stifles everyone. The core problem is the same. Everyone has some emotion the world treats as wrong. We can change that. This is why I always thank people who take the risk of being emotionally vulnerable on my channel chats. I don't get people dogpiled for expressing. I don't have to agree with someone's statement to appreciate their emotional authenticity. I think praising them for honesty, especially during disagreements, is important. Otherwise, we're going to keep getting the angry gamer thing because that's all guys are allowed to be. P.S. If you don't believe me regarding women and authentic expression, check out Rachel Simmons' book, Odd Girl Out. It deals with girls not wanting to be honest because it will get them labeled arrogant or stuck up. And the TLDR on that is that Rachel Simmons found in her studies of 7th and 8th grade girls that girls were actually not communicating how they actually felt or thought about situations because they didn't want to get labeled, at the term it was all that, stuck up, bossy, too aggressive, all that stuff. And this was enforced by other women as well, other girls, as well as the adults, male and female alike, in the equation. Because, at that point, socially, boys and girls are segregated more in their friendships, and so male enforcement of stuff was not as strong at that point as female peer group and adults in the situation. Interesting stuff. Yeah, so we've got men feeling stifled from expressing certain emotions. We've got women feeling stifled from expressing certain emotions. And then I realized, what are we seeing more and more and more in games? We're seeing these playable characters, these male playable characters, who we see the emotions they're not allowed to express. I'm talking Dad Kratos in the new God of War, right? Him struggling to kind of reach out to his son, even call his son by his given name instead of just boy, bridging that gap. We see Joel in The Last of Us, who, for all the praise of that game being so progressive, Joel is the poster boy for toxic masculinity, right? He's holding in loss and all that stuff. Toxic masculinity in air quotes, right? Toxic emotional behaviors, as I'm going to refer to going forward. But then there's Death Stranding, where again, you've got this emotionally enclosed guy played by Norman Reedus, who's, his best buddy's a fetus in a jar, but it's a very emotional story about connection and this main character who has a fear of being touched. That's really on the nose for a lot of people. And so we are seeing trends in AAA gaming that, I think that people will get different perspectives on these male characters as they go through different periods in their life. Like maybe a 15-year-old kid won't really get what's going on with Kratos, but he might identify a bit more with Atreus, though. Atreus? Boy. It's I thought the way they portrayed him as like a little shitty dickish 11-year-old might have been actually too realistic. I thought that was really well done. The way he was just a complete puke for a while there in the game. I thought that was actually realistic and cool. But these mature rated games are really wearing the mature label. And I'm like, why? These are AAA games. These are blockbuster games. These are games depicting nuance in male leads, an emotional vulnerability in their male leads that, even a lot of, primetime dramas, premium cable dramas, you don't see that. I mean, Mr. Robot, I can think of, but there isn't a heck of a lot of it. Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones, kinda. Yeah, I mean, there isn't a ton of that going on. There's a ton of it in gaming on like our equivalent of, a Marvel movie. And I know I keep using Marvel movies as an example. It's just because everybody knows them, okay? And I mean, let's face it. The protagonists, the title characters in Marvel movies are having less and less depth. When, Iron Man and Thor and Captain America came out, they were real character study origin stories for those characters. Now, they're becoming sort of more ensemble cast deals where oftentimes the title character is the least interesting person in the whole thing. I mean, was Black Panther the most interesting character in Black Panther? Not really. Loved the character. Thought great job. Thought Chadwick Boseman does a great job. But certainly not the most interesting scene-stealing character in the whole thing. And I mean, Captain Marvel, let's face it, she's upstaged by Samuel L. Jackson and a digital cat. Although they didn't use that much digital in it. They used a lot of an actual cat for Goose. But gaming's going one way. But then I realized, that nuance was always there in gaming, just not front and center. Like I said, I'm playing Through the Darkness on Twitch, and the emotion of Jackie Estacato's loss, even though he's a bit of a moron, is actually quite mature. Like the fact that he's angry and he's sad and he despairs and he feels out of control and he's even frightened in places. That's a lot for a splattery action horror shooter game. And then I go back to the original 3 Gears of War games. Gears 1, 2, and 3. There was a lot of emotional content, especially 2 and 3. 1 kind of set it up, but they had to sort of establish all the basics there, right? But there was still like loss and what the hell's going on, and the fact that from the beginning, like Baird, they say outright, he's scared shitless because he's not a soldier. He's a techie guy that got a gun put in his hand because they didn't have enough soldiers. But then, getting into the relationships with Dom and Marcus and getting more into all the characters' heads, you find out they're all really screwed up in one way or another. But for the most part, it doesn't break them. It's something they carry with them. Sometimes it breaks them momentarily, or in other cases permanently. But there's a lot of emotional nuance there. And I mean, we've already gone back to the mid-2000s. And then if you go back previous to that, go into some of like those PC games, like Myst, or like some of the, the BioWare RPGs. Yes, they're more rudimentary, but there's family drama, and there's portrayals of characters and all that stuff. It's been there in the DNA of video games from the beginning. These are the stories developers want to tell in action settings. And I mean, going back to the PS3 cycle, you've got Popo and Yo. Yes, that's more indie, but still, both indie and AAA, they go there emotionally a lot of the time. Even in some of the Assassin's Creed games, like going back to Ezio, with all that family, that gut-wrenching freaking family drama in those games. It's always been there. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about these emotional themes. I want to explore gaming as a safe space for taboo male emotions, meaning anything other than anger and aggression. And I think Loki's eating something, so I'm going to have to wrap this up pretty quickly. But that's what I want to do. I want to take a deeper dive, and by exploring, by showing it's already there, I hope that we can actually create a situation where, because the games are showing emotions in men that aren't just anger and aggression, we'll be able to take our cues from that, not just men, but also the expectations of men by everyone. What do you think? I'm looking forward to your feedback here. This is stage 2 of the consultation. So if you're looking forward to this sort of thing, you want to be more deeply involved, patrons, we do talk, we do discuss things. You guys get sneak peeks. The patrons get things before anybody else does. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.